So welcome to a special episode of CIT Career Connect. My name is Kate Whitfield and I'm a principal with Alta Planning Design in Ottawa. So for this episode, we've invited people who are currently employed in transportation engineering and planning in Canada with a few years experience. So the hope is to share stories of what it's like to work in the industry. So first, I'll ask our guests to introduce themselves from east to west. So Adriana, you are up first.
Hi there, I'm Adriana Teran. I work and live in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And currently I work with Crandall Engineering, a division of Englobe. I've been working in their transportation and traffic department for the last 3 years.
Hello everyone, my name is Erik Nevland. I'm a transportation planner and EIT at the region of Peel, which is a regional municipality in Ontario, Canada.
Hi everyone, my name is Kate McNamara. I am a transportation planner at Dillon Consulting and I am located in Toronto and Guelph.
And hello, my name is Fitzgerald. I work for Steer and I'm based out of our Vancouver office, and I primarily work on sort of our multimodal transportation projects. So when I talk about some of my experiences today, it's sort of a reflection of just that piece of the pie that Steer does, but there's so many other things that we do.
Awesome. So that's a great intro. So I hope people heard that. We've got coast to coast. We've tried to have public sector, private, and then some engineering and planning and a mix in there too. So it's really wonderful. So the next thing, the great thing about our jobs is that there's a variety of things each day. So even though we might multitask like crazy, I've asked everyone to share one project example that represents sort of what is done on a regular basis. So this time, west to east, let's hear some short stories.
I believe that makes me the first person. So in thinking about this, I want to reflect the fact that my work, if I'm thinking about a typical week, is kind of a third writing, a third Excel, and a third graphic design, if that's how you want to split it up. And so the best project to talk about that would be the Seawall project that Steer worked on within the last year. This was for the city of Vancouver in the Morton Park, English Bay sort of area. I don't know if folks are familiar. What the challenge was for that project is it's a really popular area for pedestrians and for cyclists, as well as a popular tourist destination. So there are some conflicts between the different modes and some safety concerns. And Steer's role in that was really looking at sort of some high-level network concepts around what could be done to reimagine the area when it eventually went to sort of the master planning process for the West End or for public consultation. So we were helping the city work through sort of what was feasible there. And my role in that project was preparing the data for inputting into synchro and sim traffic. So identifying what the peak was, sort of cleaning it up and making sure everything made sense. I also participated in the pedestrian comfort level analysis and the ICBC crash data analysis that was done to sort of identify pinch points. And the last really interesting thing I got to work on was sort of presenting all of that visually so that different groups within the city of Vancouver could understand it. So creating some maps to show the queue lengths, to show the changes that were being presented, so everyone had like the same level of understanding about what we were talking about.
That's a great example, and I love it because you had like planning in there, but then you're doing synchro and modeling, and then engagement and graphics. That was really great. Thank you, Mac, for that. Next, we'll pass it to Kate to tell your story.
Thanks, Kate. So like you were saying before, we really do get to work on a variety of different projects. I've been with Dillon for about the last year and a half. And during that time, I've had the opportunity to work on different transit projects, any sort of EAs and master plans. EAs is in environmental assessments. And it's been really great because I've gotten to have my toe touched in a variety of different pools, which has been great. And it's allowed me to realize which types of projects I really enjoy working on. At the beginning of my career, I really thought that I'd be working in some quantitative roles, but then throughout doing different projects in transit planning, I realized that I loved the qualitative side of planning. So within that, I decided to steer my direction towards working on master plans and environmental assessments. Most recently, I've been working on an environmental assessment in Hamilton, and it's been a fantastic project to, I guess, really jump into the role of project coordination and some background research. It's still in the preliminary stages, so I don't have a lot of concrete things to say about it, but it's been pretty great to learn.
Oh, that sounds awesome. So Erik, we'll go to you next for your story.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kate. So currently at the region, I'm on learning assignment with the traffic engineering team. And while I'm there, I'm leading the implementation of a new electronic enforcement program. But this is fairly new. So prior to this, in my home position, I'm on the transportation system planning team. And that's a team that does a mix of engineering and planning work similar to what Mac would have been describing. So on my own, I end up doing a lot of data analytics work and a lot of goods movement related work. And one interesting project, and probably timely at this point, when COVID first hit, we needed to get a better idea of the amount of traffic decrease that we were experiencing in the region. So we had a lot of data from our permanent count stations, but no way to efficiently look at it. So I was responsible for writing the computer scripts to analyze that data so we could get a better idea of and report to our council the amount of traffic reduction that we were experiencing in the region and can track it as it slowly goes back up.
That's great. That's another great story. So last but not least, Adriana, share a story from your work.
Thank you. So I would agree actually as well with Mac in that a portion of what I do for work every day as a traffic engineer is writing. In fact, more writing than I like to admit, but that is the truth of the situation. And I work for a consultant engineering firm. So we tend to have clients such as developers and work for governments and municipalities and whatnot. And so for my example, I was considering a project we recently did on a corridor study in the town of Gander in Newfoundland, actually. And one of the major aspects for the town of Gander was they have a new business park that they're developing, and their airport is expanding, and it's a huge growth for their town to see. So they have this corridor that's going along those two developments, and so to plan for the 10-year and the 20-year horizon periods, we had to do a lot of future generation for the traffic in the area, do corridor analysis for the intersection alignments and how to improve those together. And then at the same time, provide some type of pedestrian facilities, even ATV trails and whatnot, because that's just a popular use for them there. So bringing all that together around this corridor that right now doesn't see very much traffic except for during the peak hour, but considering how much the town will grow and down the line.
That's awesome. And that had private development too, which is a big part of what a lot of firms do, right? Which is the traffic impact studies for private development. Oh, that's really great. That paints a picture, but it also shows we got to be writers. We have to, how materials presented. We heard computer script in there. Yeah, the variety is definitely there. Okay, so next question. I'd like to ask if you could share one observation about your job that you wouldn't have thought of in school. So whoever wants to sort of unmute, you get to go first, but I'll just lay it out there. Just something that you hadn't thought of from your time in school that's sort of your reality today in your job. No need to be polite. There you go, Mac. Yeah.
I can go first, even though I got to go first just on the last question. Something that stands out to me, when I was in school, I didn't really have a good perception of how important software skills were for my job. I think I use a lot more software now than I was ever familiar with when I was in my undergrad or certainly in my graduate program. I'm using GIS, I'm using ME, I'm using Adobe Suite and SPSS. These are things that I really had very little practice on beforehand. So I guess in terms of thinking about people who are job searching, I would encourage them, if there's a software program that you're interested in, definitely look into that now and start getting some practice on it, because it's an asset that you can bring to an employer, and it'll be really helpful to have a background and not be learning everything on the fly.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Anyone else want to share one?
Sure, Kate, I can do so. So one of the things that you learn in school is they teach you a lot of the technical skills that you need. So you have an opportunity to see some of those software that Mac is describing, and that's really important. But one of the things that once I got into the working world, I realized even more was the importance of communication. Beyond just the writing reports, but it's reporting to in a management structure, in my work, communicating with regional council or with different businesses, communication is really key. So I think for a lot of our listeners here, and always, I would never stress against getting more and more technical knowledge, but I think that it's really important to balance that technical knowledge with really good communication skills. And we're in an industry where often a lot of people are lacking in those skills. So if you have the opportunity to practice your speaking or join a Toastmasters club or anything like that, I would highly recommend it.
So that's fun. 2 layers there. So I'm going to go build on that a little bit. So Mac, you need to answer, how do they train in a job? On-job training for new employees, if you could just take your one to a little bit further there, and then to everybody too, any other ideas on practicing or demonstrating good communication? Because people might not have a chance, right? If they're job searching. You said Toastmasters, that's a good one. How to hone those skills, because that's a huge thing, right? So Mac, I'll go back to you just on the training when at work for software, because I know people will care about that one.
Yeah, so I come to this from the private sector perspective. So we're certainly trying to balance billable work and work we can charge out to clients with the learning perspective. So certainly there's no expectation on me that my entire workday is work that we can charge out to clients. There's an opportunity within that to build in some time for training. And a lot of that looks like either on project work, someone else on the project team sort of bringing me along and showing me how they're doing something, or carving out some time to take some online modules that my firm has set up, or sort of doing some independent learning to try and pick that up on the spot. But I'd say like primarily for me, it's taking advantage of the fact that I am a new hire and I'm relatively inexpensive, and being able to sort of learn on the job, which is an awesome opportunity.
But also what you said earlier, a little bit of exposure before you get the job, you might get to put your hand up faster to get that training or to get
Totally.
that project. I think what you were hinting at earlier.
Yes, absolutely. I had a very limited background in Adobe Suite, but just enough that when a couple proposals were coming up and a couple things were coming due, that I was the person that got tapped to do that. And now that's a much bigger part of my role.
So Adriana, I'm actually going to go to you. Either training in software or communication, do you have any advice on these fronts, or your own tip that you want to share?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think when I was in university and I was trying to get my degree there, I didn't really appreciate which one of those softwares were really going to be used. So if I had done the research to know as a traffic engineer or transportation engineer, MicroStation is important, AutoCAD and Synchro, then I probably would have taken the exercises a little bit more seriously. But there's definitely ample time to learn when you begin working, and that's usually factored in, as Mac had mentioned. But yeah, that would have been the opportunity to really maximize.
For sure. For sure. So Erik, do you have any thoughts, any more there before I go to Kate? So I said I'd come forward.
In terms of software, if you have the access to it when you're in school or through organizations like ITE that sometimes have training and have reduced prices often for younger members or student members, that's one opportunity that you can have. But also look at the job postings for positions that you're interested in and see what type of software. And even if you don't have access to that software, you can even go on free websites like YouTube and often can see people just using it, because even having a familiarity with the layout can assist you in an interview to say, maybe I don't have the practical experience, but I understand at a basic level how it works, and I'm really interested to learn more about it.
Awesome. So Kate, I'm going to go to you before the next question. Anything to add in here?
For sure. So like Mac and Adriana were saying before, we do a lot of writing in our jobs. And to go off of the point of communication, one of the skills that I've attained throughout the last year and a half has been a lot of technical writing skills. But I think one of the things we lose sight of is our communication skills to the public, being able to break down a lot of this technical jargon that we have. So one of the things that I always ask myself is, when I am writing, is this something I would understand when I was in grade 12 or when I was in first year? So being able to gain those really special skills in order to break down technical jargon, I think, is very important.
That's great. So before the next question, let's just wrap this up with, so something you didn't think in school that now you see in the job. The last sort of part about software is maybe communicating what type of learner, what type of person you are. So the example for me is, you don't want me doing graphic design or learning InDesign, like it's just not how I am. But also helping someone that's trying to pick you to hire know that you're good. Erik talked about script, right, for code. That's a certain type of brain. If I can see that in a cover letter, then I can know sort of what someone would fit in for. It doesn't mean you can't wear many hats, but there is a difference between someone good at CAD all day, who's good at, graphic design, who's good. You can have sort of a blend into many skills, but you are trying to figure out from a cover letter sort of what type of person, kind of interest. So that's a hard part that we've been trying to communicate through this sort of episodes, right? So the next one, it's you got to share a story of getting a job. It doesn't have to be your current job. And then embed in there a tip. So this time, Adriana, I'm going to actually go right to you first. Do you have a story on getting a job?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about my last two successful interviews, and something that I brought to the table was when I understood what my interviewer was looking for, then I really maximized on how I could bring my best traits to that interview. So in my first one, I could tell that my interviewer was a big talker, loved conversation, would go on tangents, and then just enjoyed the other person that they were communicating with. And so I honed in on that. I can carry a conversation just fine. And so I let the conversation go where they wanted to. And it went really well. And I think I was hired for the reason that I got along well and could carry myself in conversations, not just about technical jargon. And for my next interview, my interviewer had actually asked what writing I had done and if I could share a piece of some of my work with them. So I did that. And then I also just sent along some further information on, I've written on this type of topic, I've written on that, anything else you need, I can share with you. I can exemplify this for you because you've specifically asked that this is what you're interested in. So I focused on that in the interview, and really you can find that in your interviews that there's a focus that your interviewer is looking for. And so I found that helpful.
Okay, you saw my reaction to your story.
Yes.
I love that answer. I'm sorry, no pressure to the rest of you, but I love it. I've been trying to stress this over and over and over again, trying to figure out what the person is looking for in the job, and then reflecting that back is hard, but it's part of getting the job. And that's a lovely answer, because recognizing the person you're talking to and their style of conversation, I know it's an art form, but it's a great one to figure out, because you will use that in your job every single day, right? What type of client? Do they like small talk? Do they not like small talk? It's a big part of what we do. So I love it. You saw my face. I couldn't stop laughing. So no pressure. To Mac, how about you, Try? Do you have your tip, your story?
I do, and I kind of have to walk it back a little bit. It's how I got my first job in transportation, and it's maybe a tip more for the folks that sort of straddle the urban planning and transportation planning realm. I actually got my first job through a pitch competition with the city of Kingston. So the mayor's challenge is offered every year, and they sort of put out these issues and these problems that the city's looking to tackle, and the winning team is awarded an internship. And I think that I have two sort of things that I learned from that. One is I really got the sense when we were giving our pitch at the end during the question period, when we weren't too attached to what we were talking about and we were able to pivot, that's when I could tell we won council over and we won a lot of the folks over, that these were the types of people that they wanted to give a job to. And the second thing is just to encourage folks to seek out those types of opportunities. That was putting a lot of stuff together over spring break, but it was exciting and it was interesting to think about those problems. And I found that even though the chances of me getting a job out of that were really slim when I was working on it, it was engaging, interesting work and something I could put on my CV later. So if people see those opportunities, I'd say go for them, because, somehow it landed me a job and here I am today. It led me to build a lot of connections in the city of Kingston with other folks that really helped me build up the case when I came to applying for jobs out of school, that, I really did have a good background in this, all within kind of a year.
Yeah, that's a really good example because that has both like an opportunity, but also you played on something. I often get asked, well, can a planner apply for an engineer's job and an engineer apply for a planner job? And I get why I get asked that, because how even we all like to use the word transportation planner and it can mean so many things. So that's fun that you took that angle. So Erik, do you have a story and a tip?
Absolutely, Kate. So at the time when I got my current job, I was a Master of Applied Science and Civil Engineering student at York University. And an opportunity came up, a role at the region of Peel, and it is exactly what I was looking for, a focus on goods movement, a mix of planning and engineering work. And it wasn't maybe the opportune time to apply, but I knew that these opportunities don't always come up when you're most hoping for them. You kind of have to go along with these opportunities. So I decided to apply, and I ended up getting an interview and getting the position. And there's kind of two lessons within this. I guess the first one being that you need to always be looking for opportunities. Sometimes it's not the easy opportunity. I studied alongside a lot of people who came from overseas to get their education in Canada and find work in Canada, and that's a prime example of being willing to go outside of your comfort zone in order to find employment. And at the time, I was still a student for my first year of working at the region. For the first 3 months, I was still taking courses and I was a TA while working full time. So it was not easy. It wasn't easy on my wife either, but in the end, it was really worth it looking for those opportunities. And the other being, my manager told me afterwards, is one of the locations that he had noticed me and seen me is through the ITE York University student chapter. So that's going to be a big plug for ITE and organizations like it. Whether you're a student or a young professional in work looking for work, get involved in these organizations, because these are the connections that are going to help you to find these different positions, to open up these doors.
That's great. Obviously, with who our host is, but also just it's such good advice, and it relates to my next one. So you've been working for a number of years now. What's your, I guess, to anybody, your networking tip? And while people decide, Adriana, will go to you first, but just ITE is an example, right? Involvement in an organization. But when we get into this detail, people want to know actually how you do it. So it's very funny. Some people say to me, what do I say to somebody if I walk up to them at an event? So in your answers, or we'll come back around, that's how specific we should be in our advice, because that's fair. That's what people ask me. So Adriana, just generally networking tip.
Yeah, I was going to suggest networking 100% all the way, all the time in any organizations that you can find, as Erik was saying, because it really is one of the ways that just getting your name out there and making those connections with others will really create those opportunities. And so back when I was working in actually Texas in the US, I was part of maybe 3 different organizations. I was part of Young Professionals in Transportation, and I tried to get on the board as soon as I could. And that really just gave another leg up to having everybody's name on a list, just already knowing their names right off the bat and saying, haven't seen you on an event before, nice to meet you. And you can say that not even being on a board, just saying, I don't think I've come to one of these before. I don't think I've seen you at these before. Weird place that they picked this time, different topics like that. Really, you could Google any like conversation starter for how to speak to somebody, and it's just getting your foot in that really makes the difference. So go to as many as you can. I'm 100% behind networking. And if it wasn't COVID, I'd be out doing it right now. Probably. I enjoy it very much.
So Kate, do you want to share?
For sure. So from my perspective, I'm a pretty introverted person. So when I go to large networking events, I can find it pretty intimidating. So one of the approaches that I take is that I usually say, like, it's really great to meet you. Like, could we catch up like another time? Because it can just be a really intense conversation when you have so many other people around. So at times I usually have suggested, can we get coffee next week? And then when I do land that opportunity to talk to that person, I always try to make an action item out of what I'm going to be talking to them about. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I made in some of the networking opportunities that I had was that I went into these conversations and I really didn't know what I wanted to get out of it. I thought, that's great, I'm talking to the director of transportation from this municipality, but what is the outcome of this? So some key action items could be, could you review my CV? Could you connect me with this person, maybe a junior staff, or even just asking really important questions that you want to get the answer of.
That's fantastic for two reasons. Thank you for sharing that. But I also was going to make the comment that not everybody is like Adriana or myself, who is just like, this is fun, I love this. So we can't give every piece of advice for the extrovert who like I can't get enough of it, right? So it's not fair to say everyone has to, we're not trying to make everybody have the same perspective in any way. So I love that. I love what you just shared there. And that was a great, great tip. Also from the person being called, like, what are you trying to figure out? What is this person calling me about? And what can I give? Recently, someone on LinkedIn, their first line was, I like, or complete streets advice before they wrote it. It was interesting. It was a way of getting my attention. So it was like an intention before a message instead of a really long message where I'm like looking for what they want to talk to me about. It was an interesting tip. We'll see if I call them back, but it might be enough. So anybody else about networking?
If I can just build on that and say that I think that it's really great not to fool yourself. If there are some things you're more comfortable with or less comfortable with, like it's always good to play to your strengths. If there's an environment you're more comfortable in, like stick to that. But my tip that I thought of was just reminding people that the easiest thing for the person you're talking to is to ask them to talk about themselves. Asking them why they're at the conference, asking them what they do, they have an answer for that question because they know themselves really well. And so if you're stuck and you don't know what to say, ask them about them, because then it makes it easy for them to participate and it takes the weight off of you because they're going to be talking for a while and you just have to listen and hear something that they've said that comes out that's interesting for you, and then the conversation gets rolling.
That's also fantastic because because of also egos, right? Like some people love talking about themselves. Never guilty of that. So, you know, it's very good advice. Very, very good advice. I just love this. Anything else there? Any other? Erik, do you have one?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I'd like to build on that a little bit as well. So in terms of networking, I would even push back on that and say, I would say push your boundaries a little bit in a healthy way, in a safe way to do that. Would be getting involved in groups where it's people who are at a more similar level to you. And Adriana mentioned an organization like Young Professionals in Transportation. Lots of ITE chapters have younger member groups. And these can be opportunities where if you're uncomfortable with networking, you can learn to network with other people who are also very uncomfortable often with networking and learn to improve those skills. And I've seen that go a long way for a lot of my colleagues, especially if you're new. So I'm originally from the prairies. I've only been here in Ontario for a couple of years now. And getting involved with the Young Professionals in Transportation and ITE has been really valuable for me. And for a lot of people that I know who maybe come from a different country and have English as a second language, oftentimes that's associated with a lack of confidence, not because they don't have the skills, but because they're nervous about their communication abilities. And the best way to work on that is to practice. And I've seen a lot of my colleagues who at first are uncomfortable with speaking and go really, really far and have jumped leaps and bounds in their careers in the short time that I've known them just by gaining their confidence.
Okay, I'm going to take a little spin on, because this is really good. Let's pretend you all live in Ottawa and there is a National Capital webinar coming up, okay? And instead of just attending, getting the information and leaving, what would you do to get more out of that? Pretending you were looking for work. Let's try this to see if anyone has a tip. Mac.
I would go in with a plan. Knowing myself personally, I would be combing through that agenda and picking all of my sessions beforehand, thinking about like what I wanted to learn, what types of shoulders I wanted to bump into. Like if there was certain presentations that sounded really interesting to me, that would be also the kind of work I'm interested in, and those would be the kinds of folks that I would be wanting to pinpoint and talk to in sort of the more open portions. So that would be my approach.
Okay, so it's virtual. So taking that to the virtual world, no, totally fair. Maybe look up every speaker on LinkedIn before the event of the session that you liked, or if it was the one session, taking the time to look at the attendance list and maybe messaging someone afterwards. Hey, I saw that you were also here. I did my paper on shared micromobility. Can I call you? So continuing on this sort of mock scenario, one more thing. We heard about the organizing committee. Man, you meet a lot of people if you participate in organizing. And Erik, your advice was feedback, but also organizing. You just met 8 more people. But other ones, like actually make yourself ask a question is another example. Intimidating, but possible. And then you could go further with like a reflective post afterwards, but there are ways. But in this COVID time, attending these events, trying to use it more than just I attended and got information. And then it's also okay to refer to it in a cover letter if you really need to, anything that shows that learning. So that was a fun bonus scenario, masterclass in virtual of a lunchtime virtual webinar. Okay, so as we wrap up here, so in these COVID times, a lot of people getting jobs are going to be onboarded remotely. So you four have lovely looking workplaces, but you probably you had to transition to working at home while having a job. But as people are starting jobs, and their first day, they might not meet their boss in person. They might do their HR orientation on the computer, and I guess an IT department might drop off a box. Maybe someone goes in and picks up their screens and everything. So just your thoughts on someone's expectations. They've got a job, they're starting, they're in their houses. Let's use that scenario, not where you're going to an office. Just some thoughts on onboarding for new hires.
Sure, Kate. I can talk about onboarding. So one of the issues that you'll, if you're not working at the moment or if you've worked before, with moving everything to digital, there's going to be a lot of technical issues. For those watching today might not see him, but Stephen is with us and he's cleaning everything up, all the technical glitches that we've had in the background. And I think it's always important to remember, as we've moved to digital, there will be technical glitches, and it's try to, if something does happen, try to remain calm and know that it's something that is happening all the time. I'm sure if you've been to webinars or sessions, I'm sure it's happened at those events too. So just try to stay calm with any of the technical glitches and do your best to move forward. That'd be one thing that I would definitely recommend for people who are starting to work online for the first time or having digital interviews. I know my wife had an interview and it cut out for a small period of time, and these things happen. You just have to go with the flow. And it's a way that you can show a potential employer that you have the ability to go with things and deal with these types of challenges.
Absolutely.
So my piece of advice would just be to be patient with yourself. I think getting to know other people online can be a really challenging experience. So going forward with that, definitely taking advantage of chatting with other people online, setting up lunches are very important, any sort of get to know you meetings. And I think really targeting people who are junior staff are important as well. If you're a new grad, they've been in your shoes earlier than maybe your manager has. So they would have definitely a little bit more maybe empathy for you in your situation and want to get to know you.
That's great. I mean, you're going to have your own relationship with your manager and learn their communication style and how they relay information. You're going to learn, do you like pinging messages on your desk all day, distracting you, or do you do better in sort of a group meeting every couple days? There's lots of different ways to communicate. that are quite amazing. And you'll have different people. I like it, Kate. You have different people in your life, right? You can have support different ways. It doesn't all have to come from one source, but it does require some patience, because there's going to be times where you're sitting there going, I feel like I should be delivering something. I have no idea what I'm doing. And other times you'd be able to walk over to another desk and, ask a friend. But you got to figure out how to do that in digital world. Great. So as we wrap up, just open floor. Any other advice? This is for people that are looking for jobs right now in the world of job hunting, networking. Anything we missed?
Am I allowed to take that question and then loop back to that after other people have had a chance to go? The first question, the previous question?
I love a good loop back. It's
Okay, great. I think that it's funny because since Steer is a very global sort of set of offices, I think I got some experience in that virtual onboarding back when I joined, because it's important to know the folks at the Toronto office and the New York office, and because those are people that I would still be working with. And so I guess what I learned is, if there is something you're interested in, ask about if there's a group of people that are doing that already in your company, whether that's planning socials, or a group that's specifically interested in a certain transportation issue, or an EDI group, whatever your passion might be. If you already know that coming into a company, ask your personal supervisor, ask around to see if those people, if that group's already been pulled together, and ask if you can join, because people are definitely willing to have the help and excited for new ideas usually. So that was my tip on that question.
No, it's a great tip. Companies of all sizes have different specialists in different subjects, and sometimes it's all you need is a little extra way of being connected. Is there anything else that anyone wants to add to that?
I was going to add to the general tips and saying not to get discouraged and to keep at it, because interviewing is hard, especially when you don't have that much project experience to offer, or career experience yet. So this is just a phase that we have all gone through, and the interviewer has been in your position before. So do not be discouraged. You'll go on a lot of interviews, and I wouldn't say that any of them are really bad interviews, or always a good learning experience, and no opportunity to have an interview is a bad opportunity either, because I have definitely attended interviews where I thought I may not be that interested in this position, but I think it's worth both the interviewers and my time to learn that about one another. So take advantage when you can, especially of different networking events, or LinkedIn, or anywhere you can really see that you could maybe get a good opportunity out of it.
That's great. Okay, Mac, you want a top final tip?
I do. I think in thinking about this question, what I would encourage folks to do, especially people who are, in that stage of applying to a lot of jobs or looking for their first job, is to take the time to do some self-reflection and try and develop a personal brand. I think that, I spent a lot of time trying to tailor my CV and my cover letter, and trying to get everything perfect for every job, and it became exhausting to sort of keep pumping that out. And I think if you can be more true to yourself and sort of identifying who you are, what you're good at, and maybe even what you're uniquely good at, and doing that work up front, I think it can be really helpful to sort of scope down that application process. And I think that at the end of the day, when you do get that job, I think you're providing a much more accurate reflection of yourself to that employer, and hopefully you'll end up getting a better match, because you'll both kind of be on the same page about who you are and if there's a good fit. So that's my last tip.
No, it's a good one. Erik?
Yeah, so for my final tip, and it does relate back to networking, but it's taking networking to the next level. And that's where I would encourage volunteering. So especially if you're currently in a position where you're searching for work, maybe you've finished your schooling, maybe you're just in the process of finishing schooling, you're in a unique time where you have extra time available to get more involved in these volunteering opportunities. And there are lots of different organizations like the Institute of Transportation Engineers. Adriana mentioned Young Professionals in Transportation, and oftentimes they have committee member at large positions on their boards. There's also your provincial and territorial planning and engineering organizations that often have roles for young professionals as well. So if you're really looking for opportunities to network and speak with people who are more experienced in your field, don't only network, but I'd encourage you, if you have the time, and even if you don't, try to make it, to volunteer, because not only does it add something additional that you can put on your resume to show a potential employer your commitment to the field, but it also gives you that exposure and experience interacting and speaking with the different people in our very interesting field.
That's great. So we'll wrap up here. So for everybody, this was a special episode, right? Not job seekers, but people that had been working for a while in the field and sharing their stories and observations. So in the new year, we'll keep going with connecting job seekers with people currently employed. But I think we're at episode 8 or 9 now. We've covered a lot of companies and a lot of cities. So there, if we don't post for a little bit, go back and visit the episodes, because there's great advice in there. And I know we say don't give up, but I mean, there's a lot in there to look through and consider. And sometimes I watch it in other people, like, grab the help that is being offered. There's a lot of people that do want to help. Mac posted a really generous LinkedIn post the other day. So see those moments. It was about opening at his company, and see those moments and try to connect, right? And the connection now might not equal the job, but it could in the future. A new relationship, a new client, anything, right? But it can open some doors. So it's really wonderful. So the last part is just, we post these all to CIT's YouTube page. Now there's an episode about the benefits of a membership. There's a story of someone using these episodes and getting a job. And I think we have a few more people that have been employed. I'm just waiting for their stories. So we'll post them too, because we want to share the positive, especially, as we approach the holidays. So thank you everybody here